I mean, this is like 30 feet tall. It's pretty big. So on this Searching for History, we're going to take a look and see if we can find any evidence of the last glaciation that came all the way down into Thurston County. Pretty much most of my life, I've always heard that an ice sheet came down to about Tenino or Grand Mound and then receded from there. And that would be about 17,000 years ago. And apparently it sat there for about one or 200 years, and then it began to retreat. So like right here in Olympia where our house is, when the ice sheet was here, there was something like 200 meters, almost 700 feet of ice like above us, which is pretty incredible to think about. So we're going to take a drive around Thurston County and see what kind of evidence that we can find that would show that an ice sheet once sat on top of us and then retreated. I happen to know of a few places, so we'll go and check them out. So our first stop is actually not very far from home. It's a lake called Ward Lake.
So what about this lake makes it evidence that a glacier was here?
So we are looking at Ward Lake, and this is what's called a Kettle or a Kettle Lake. And my understanding is as the ice retreated, incredibly large chunks of ice would break off and settle into the glacial outwash, like all the silt and gravel that's behind the glacier as it's retreating.
Okay.
So in front of the face of the glacier. And the giant chunk of ice would have settled here, and then as it melted, it left an impression that filled with water. Some kettles don't fill with water, but obviously this one did. And so you can kind of imagine like the size of the chunk of ice. I mean, it would have spanned this entire lake and definitely been as high as the ground that you see across, if not considerably higher. And then all the way down to the bottom of the lake, which, could be several dozen feet, 100 feet deep. I'm not quite sure. Thurston County has quite a few lakes that are considered kettle lakes. This is just one example. So what do you think?
Well, we haven't gotten very far from our house, and we've already seen some evidence in the landscape for that big glacier being here.
Yeah, and actually there's another lake just to the south of here. I forget the name of it at the moment, but it's not far from our house, and that's also a kettle lake. Just right over there.
Yeah.
All right, let's go look at the next stop.
Yeah, let's go find more.
So we're on Oyster Bay Road, and I've heard that somewhere out here towards the end is a glacial erratic. So for those that don't know, a glacial erratic is like a large boulder that was carried in the ice sheet from somewhere to the north, and it carried it all the way south to the southern end of Puget Sound. And then when the glacier retreated, when the ice sheet retreated, it left this boulder behind. And that's it's called an erratic, or a glacial erratic. So we're going to see if we can find one out here. It's supposed to be right next to the road. So that's salt water there on the right. So I think just right up here is the glacial erratic. So that's Oyster Bay out there. Okay, here it is. It's pretty big. It's interesting how there's some of the edges on it are kind of smooth.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big boulder. So can you imagine the retreating ice sheet leaving that behind?
Yeah.
So that's more evidence of a glacial history here in Thurston County. So now we're going to go find evidence of a glacial melt river. All right, so I think we're approaching the Spurgeon Creek Valley. This valley is an example of a glacial melt river valley. So today's, the current Spurgeon Creek is much, much too small to have created this entire valley. So hopefully we'll be able to see that. Yeah, so we're in the valley right now. And Spurgeon Creek is just something really small coming into this swampy area and then heading out that way. But the head of the river would have been in this direction. So, as you can see, this is quite the wide valley, and somewhere in the middle of this swampy area is the little creek, Spurgeon Creek. So you can imagine as the glacier somewhere in that direction was melting and receding, that a river formed and flowed out this direction and would have gone down into the Chehalis River and flowed out through Aberdeen. So here's more evidence that there was once a glacial ice sheet here that receded. Okay, so I do know where there's another glacial erratic. It's kind of near Vail. So let's drive over there and take a look at it. You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so somewhere along this road, I believe we're out towards Lake Lawrence, is another glacial erratic. I've never been to this one, so we're gonna try to go slow and see if we can find it. I believe it's right next to the road. If we see a fire station, then we missed it, and we gotta turn around. Oh, there's no missing it. It's right here. Look at this giant boulder. See that?
Yeah.
Here, we'll pull into this fire station and we'll walk over there and look at it. Now this one's pretty big.
This is huge.
I mean, this is like 30 feet tall. It's pretty big. So can you imagine retreating glacier dropping this thing?
Well, that's how you know the glacier was super huge.
And just think, like, this boulder could have been carried from Canada or, you know, super far to the north and pushed all the way down through the Puget Trough, and then as it retreated was dropped here. It's pretty amazing. I wonder if the road had to be moved a little bit to avoid this thing.
Yeah, I would think so.
Pretty cool.
I wonder how deep it goes in.
You know, my hunch is it's more or less just sitting here.
Just sitting on top.
All right, I know of one more type of feature that would show us evidence of the glacial ice sheet coming down to Thurston County and then retreating. So let's go take a look.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, on to the last spot.
Let's go.
This is a big rock.
It really is a big rock. I think there is a gentle jog in the road too.
Yep.
The final bit of evidence that we're going to go check out there's mounds that have formed in various areas around Thurston County. The most well-known are called the Mima Mounds. No one has really explained how they formed, but there's some kind of outlandish explanations that we'll get into when we get to the Mima Mounds, but they likely have something to do with the glaciers, the glacial sheet, either sitting in one spot before it retreated or its retreat. I think there's 4 different areas I'm aware of. One is north of Tenino. I think it's near like Waldrick Road. And then there's another patch of mounds that's kind of northwest of Tenino, and that's kind of out in this prairie. I don't remember what that one's called. And then straight west of Tenino, in this valley that we're going to drive through, there's mounds either side of the highway. But then we're going to go over to the Mima Mounds, which there's a natural area that we can go walk around in, and there's some like informational kiosk that kind of has different theories on how they were formed. Yeah, so in this valley here are some Mima Mound type features. Let's see if we can see some from the road as we're driving through. Yeah, so you can see a little bit right over here on the left side of the road. And they're over there too. See them? Kind of hard to make out, but they're there. Here, you can see them better over here. Kind of hummocky features. So there's I-5.
Yeah, that's something I like about the landscape around here is I don't know if people realize how much prairie is actually
Right.
in Western Washington.
Well, before Euro-Americans showed up, the Native Americans maintained these prairies by burning them every now and then. And the reason why you see so many trees growing on them now is because that burning has stopped.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Scotch broom and the invasion of Scotch broom has started to radically change the nature of the prairie also. I think there's actually one more place where there's some Mima Mounds, those kind of mounds, and it's actually up Case Road, not far from here. I forgot about that. Fish and Wildlife game area. let's go up on top of the dome out there. That's interesting. In 1841, Charles Wilkes, commander of the United States exploring expedition, thought the Mima Mounds might be burial sites. What we know for sure, the Mima Mounds were formed sometime after Ice Age glaciers began receding 16,500 years ago. Yeah, so here are the Mima Mounds. Here's Olympia, and so that's kind of the extent.
This is the sheet.
The Cordilleran ice sheet. Yeah, in fact, I think this corridor is what's theorized where people came across the land bridge and then through this corridor down into what is the United States and then further south.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then there's the pocket gopher hypothesis.
So here's a cross section of a mound.
Right, because they excavated a few of them to see if they were burial mounds or what
Yeah, so
they
you have
were.
glacial outwash and large cobbles, and then I think it's finer up actually in the mound. So where's the...
Right here. In the 1940s, these two, Walter Dahlquist and Victor Schaefer, thought that the Mima Mounds were formed by pocket gophers.
Yeah, so here's the areas of Mima Mounds. So this is to the north of Tenino that I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And then here's the valley we drove through. And then now we're up here, Mima Prairie.
A story from the first people. According to stories told by people of the Upper Chehalis tribe, the Mima Mounds were left behind after a great flood subsided. Thrush was a disgrace to the tribe. The people had noticed for many years that she would not wash her face or bathe. She would not go near the water. My friends, Thrush would say, if I should wash my face, something might happen to the earth. One day, at last, she consented to wash her face. Clouds started to form immediately. It rained and rained. The whole world was flooded. There was nothing but prairie land beneath the water. At last the water fell. The earth remains in the shape of waves. It extends like this for 4 or 5 miles.
So that's all the evidence that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's more out there, but evidence for the ice sheet coming down into Thurston County and then receding. The Kettle Lake, was that convincing for you that a glacier had once been there and then receded? A glacial
Yes.
sheet?
Yes, I do. I do think that is convincing evidence. Yes. Because I think you can see like a depression that goes up further than just where the water is all around that lake. And I'd like to see, really like get my eyes on other Kettle lakes so that I can see more of that.
See if they're similar.
See if they're similar that way. That's what it looked like to me. And I guess that would differentiate it from just something filling with water.
Right, like, because there's lots of lakes in Thurston County, but I don't think they're all Kettle lakes.
Right.
Okay, what about the two glacial erratics that we went and saw today? Convincing or not convincing?
I think those are also convincing, but I think the biggest one was more convincing.
So the second one we went and
The
saw.
second one we saw. Because those, like the big glacial erratics are so big that it's hard to imagine them being moved by anything other than a glacier.
Right.
They're
like
so huge.
What other natural forces could have put that there?
Right.
I agree. That seems very convincing. And more convincing than looking at that lake and then imagining a giant piece of ice.
Yeah. It's a very, seeing that big boulder, it's it's right there in front of you. It's very like physical and real. You don't have to imagine very much. It's right there.
What about the Glacial Melt River Valley? Was that convincing or not convincing?
That's also convincing, but similar to the Kettle Lake, maybe a little harder because it's such a big valley. You have to use your imagination a little bit more, maybe, to envision this big piece of, this big glacier carving that out. It's not like the big boulder that's just right in front of you.
Okay, so the final piece of evidence, we looked at these mounds that we call the Mima Mounds. Is that convincing evidence or not convincing?
I think the Mima Mounds are also convincing in a similar way that the glacial erratics are, because it's an unusual physical piece of evidence in the landscape. So I think this is really compelling evidence. And it's such an unusual thing to see in the landscape, too.
So I'm convinced that there was a glacial sheet that had extended all the way down into Thurston County. I feel like, even though people have told me that there is enough physical evidence that we can go and look at that we know it really happened.
Yes. Yeah. And now you can too.
That's it for our adventure today, learning a little bit about the glacial history of Thurston County. We'd like to remind you guys to please subscribe to our videos. It really helps out, and we would really like to have a successful YouTube channel. So please subscribe.
And also give us a like if you liked it, and share it with your friends.
All right. See you next time.
Thanks for watching.